Hello everyone, I'm Jade the Willow, and we are going to combine a tropical fantasy parody paradise theme with SolarPunk. And if you're wondering how we're going to do that, I've also been wondering this for the past month, but I've finally got it figured out. So we're going to create a multi-building complex in this area, clearing here behind me, on our fantasy tropical island. And we're going to be building it for some environmentally conscious pirates and explore their story. The first building we're going to build is going to be also the first building that the pirates built on this island. So imagine you're part of the Royal Navy, or whatever you want to call it, and you get sent out on a mission to discover some new technologies to bring back to your home country. Obviously, things didn't go very well because we're building a house right now and not a boat. So for this first building, I like to imagine that they're not ready, the pirates aren't ready to implement full SolarPunk technologies yet. They're just getting their base started. They've just started stealing all of the different technologies. So they're not quite ready to build out solar panels and that sort of thing yet. However, they are able to use methods of sustainability and environment, conscious things in their build. So we're going to do green roofs so that when it rains, the water can be soaked up by the roof. It minimizes, it minimizes the negative impact that, a regular roof might have. Like if you're looking at it top down, the more green, the better. Also fits in with our tropical thing very well. And then the other thing I wanted to do was do the building out of bamboo, which can be a very good renewable resource, especially in Minecraft. It's so easy to replant. And then the birch isn't actually supposed to be birch wood. It's just supposed to be a lighter color of the bamboo, just to keep things switched up and interesting. Okay, so I went on a little history dive, and electricity didn't start getting, investigated until after the golden age of piracy, about-ish. So since we're in a fantasy world, we're going to set our timeline as if the electricity and swashbuckling adventure overlaps a little bit more. And as we dive into the story, I'll explain it through the lore. Because I imagine it rains a lot, we want to have a very sloped roof so that even though the grass and this roof is absorbing some of the rainwater, all of the excess can roll off so it doesn't get flat, because green roofs tend to be very heavy. Despite using bamboo because it's sustainable, I am going to use spruce wood for the edges of this, not because it's something that specifically can be found on the island, but because I think it'll look nicest. I wasn't sure if I wanted a second layer or not. So back to the story. Our pirates have been sent out for new technologies, and they found a city that uses renewable energy sources, and they're fascinated, and so they study the city's methods and they bring it back to their country. But this country says no. We wanted something to make our lives easier, and this would involve reworking our entire system. And so the crew tries to spread the word, and the government shuts them down. Now, I know this is a little extreme, but just to use your suspension of disbelief, or, put down a comment with a better story idea. That totally works too. It took me about half an hour to sort all this out. Doesn't really have my blood, sweat, and tears. It's just a bit of creative fun. So anyway, this crew, branded as lawbreakers and traitors for wanting to change up the energy it really doesn't make that much sense. But they are cast out, and they find this island, and they begin to set up a base. So that's the first part of the story, and that brings us to build 1. And so they're just getting started with this whole renewable energy thing, and they don't really have the infrastructure to make that yet, but they can use the renewable building materials. So that's what they do, and that's the main focus of this one, is just them setting up their base using materials that they find, establishing a new home, and building consciously. So another thing I really wanted to add was natural rainwater collections. And I was thinking a couple different ways to do this. One, I could have the rainwater run off like a gutter, but I don't know if that's the kind of water they'd want to collect because it would have filtered all through there. I'm sure they'd rather just have it straight from the sky. So I was going to use some of these pots to do that, but maybe I'll also just set that up on this as it's under a tree. Okay, so this is natural rainwater collection, and this is just decoration. So building 2 is going to work a little bit more on their next phase, and it's when they officially become pirates and they officially start embracing the SolarPunk lifestyle. And so they're going to continue using the same materials that they can find and they can replace. And now this time lapse here got a little, I have no idea what happened, but it just pauses for a while and my person still is moving. It's not frozen. It just doesn't record that I was building the roof. So I am actually building the roof. And then once it stops being paused, it continues and you can't see anything I've done except where I replaced the moss roof with the hay, or I put grass on it and then all of a sudden the block that the grass is on appears. And I was gonna leave it out, but I just thought it was so funny to watch the little roof appear, and it just makes sense and it looks like I'm a completely crazy builder, and I thought it was funny, so I wanted to share. We do have a solar panel just slapped on top of this one. I want it to be rotating, so I've faced it east to west, and it can go tilt on each side of the roof depending on where the sun is throughout the day. I love using the skull box for my SolarPunk panels, so that's what that is. And then I put in some copper because it's fun and colorful and it looks a little bit more techy. And then I added in a lightning rod just to kind of represent the electrical connection of it all. To explain more as I start building the next phase of this area, the windmill, what makes them pirates since they're so focused on SolarPunk? My thought was that they go back to the original city where they found this renewable energy sources, and the city helps them out a little bit, but not as much as these, to-be pirates want to be. So they're pillaging and plundering for the resources they need to make these SolarPunk panels or other bits of technology and things maybe that they can't supply on the island because they don't have any money. They were just cast out, and they want to care for the earth, but they don't particularly care if they hurt, the people they're stealing from. Hence, the pirates. So I imagine this whole crew, maybe they had an engineer or somebody else on board who would kind of know how to implement these technologies onto their home base. And so the whole crew would start learning how to build and how to produce, their own solar panels and build using all of these stolen materials. So it's sort of like a villain origin story, which I do not approve of. Just don't try it at home. Alright, so continuing, like I mentioned, for this windmill, I wanted to try to meld the SolarPunk and the fantasy pirates, and I figure a windmill would be fun because that's a very, when you think SolarPunk and you think renewable technologies, a lot of people imagine windmills. But I wanted, plus I figure it's pretty windy here at the seaside because the ocean is very windy, and they would want to harness this natural energy source. So there's a sort of traditional, medieval windmills that have a more mechanical purpose, and then there's the modern windmill wind turbines that you see in the field as you drive past on the highway. So we can use this windmill as either for a mechanical purpose to help them process whatever they need to process, or as energy generating. It just depends, I guess, on what the pirates would most need. But I wanted to do the more traditional windmill style because it's more of that fantasy piratey feel. And I thought pirates have huge sails on their ships, so I feel like using the fabric and that sort of thing for the windmill kind of ties to areas or skills that pirates might already have. And so I liked that tie-in, even if it doesn't make as much sense, but that's what I did, and that's why. And I put a lightning rod on top of the roof again because I assume it's very stormy and rainy, and I was inspired by the lightning rods in Stardew Valley, and I thought it would be fun, and I just love the bright color of the copper. So now that we have our story pretty much established and a very good base for our village, we can now add in a whole bunch of extra details. This also needs to be fixed, don't worry. But we'll add in little details that will make this feel more solarpunk and more pirate-y. Okay, this one isn't particularly solarpunk or pirate-y, but lampposts are always a nice thing, man, to add in to make it feel a little bit more lived in and established. Okay, I also really want to add in some flags, because when you think of pirates, you always think of flags, right? And I don't want to do banners, even though that would be cool and I could make a cool design, because when you do banners, sometimes it blinks out when you're too far away, and I don't want that. So we're just gonna do a regular ginormous wool flag. Does that work? Does that look too silly? Okay, it's gonna be our pirate flag. Right, so we've added in a bunch more details and a bunch more parrots because they're fantastic. And now that this is looking better and more lived in and more complete and full, there's one last thing that I want to do. In this area, because I don't really think there's this river, waterfall, stream, and this little place over here. Otherwise, there's not too much in terms of fresh water on this island. And I was thinking a cool way to bring in some technology is to add in a water filtration system, specifically using the process of removing salts and other minerals from like salt water, which is called desalination. And there's multiple different methods for this one, and I think reverse osmosis is the most energy and environmentally friendly option. So that's what we're going to be building. I'm gonna be doing this with my Minecraft blocks, so we'll see, really how it works out. But what I'm gonna do is use copper for my pipes because it's pretty and shiny, and I like that it's pretty and shiny. So we're gonna, some things I'm gonna try to be realistic and some things I'm not gonna be trying to be realistic, and the copper pipes really is just because I like the pretty colors. And I generally am using copper because it looks a little bit more techy, futuristic, as opposed to the wood and things otherwise. That being said, hold on, I'm trying to think and talk and it's not really going. That being said, I do want to mix in a couple of other blocks and materials in this because I do still want the pirates to be trying to be environmentally friendly. So in a couple places we'll use wood instead, and then in the areas like where I'm using the quartz, where maybe that material and the fact that the pirates have that material doesn't quite make sense, we're going to call that using plundered materials, which I think is great. Not the plundering, obviously. I don't condone piracy. So I have a chart that I'm kind of looking at, a diagram rather. So this first one is supposed to be like filtering out sediment and bad stuff, and then I'm gonna simplify it a little bit. But then there needs to be a tank where the actual reverse osmosis happens. And we're not gonna worry about that. It's just, we're gonna leave it as a block and say that it's happening, one big brick. The magic science-y stuff is happening in here, and that's gonna be fine. And then we're going to just carry it out a little farther. I don't actually know why there's so many pipes. So we'll just do this. We'll want another little filter. And then we'll have the storage tanks, which I'm going to build out of wood because I want it to feel piratey still. And I think this will be a good mixture. We're using jungle wood because there's a lot of jungle wood on this tropical island. I feel like that looks a little techy, maybe a little weird if you don't know what's going on, but not too bad. So we've got 2 filters on either side and the bigger area where the actual reverse osmosis and all of that happens. Maybe I need another, I need another output. We'll have it come out from here. It's a little messy, but you know what? They're pirates, they're experimenting. They have the blueprints, but they've never done this before. But they made it work. So now we have a water filtration system, a way to harness wind energy, either for energy, like electricity, sorry, that was the word I was looking for electricity, or for more mechanical power. This will fix up later when we build the pirate ship, but that's a different video. We've got lots of little areas for solar panels. These ones rotate, not really, but we're pretending these rotate. We've got some pirate flags, lots of little chests and things hanging around. There you have it, a pirate village full of environmentally conscious pirates. Thanks for being here, thanks for watching the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!